Hello and welcome to Market Insight. I am Lovina Emma. Our focus today is on food and agriculture. Now we're going to discuss a critical challenge that is affecting the agricultural industry, the financial gaps faced by farmers. Now these gaps can hinder growth, innovation, and even threaten the survival of farms. But fear not, we're here to explore solutions. An expert in agriculture and entrepreneurship who is breaking new grounds in agricultural finance will uncover lending options, discuss risk management strategies, and explore how technology is transforming the financial landscape for farmers. So whether you're a farmer yourself or simply interested in the future of food production, stay tuned because we're about to bridge the gap between financial hurdles and agricultural success stories. My guest this morning is Emmanuel Abushson. He's the Executive Director, Pan-African Institute of Agribusiness Management and CEO, Trema Agro Services Limited. Mr. Emmanuel Abushson is joining us via Zoom this morning on Market Insights. So, Mr. Abushson, are you with us now? Oh, welcome to Market Insights. Thank you for joining us this morning. Yes, we're having Adam. Happy Salah.
Thank you so much.
Okay. How are you doing, Mr. Abushson?
It's nice to have you. It's nice to be here again.
It is. We are happy to see you. So we're discussing how to bridge the financial gaps for farmers, exploring solutions. Now, we know that farming in Nigeria is something that is very, very important to us in this country. It's something that has been also causing this inflation in Nigeria. As you know, food inflation is over 31% right now, and analysts are predicting that the food inflation will still go higher up if more proactive measures are not put in place by the government also. So today we're going to be looking at how, yes, we know farmers are facing the challenges of insecurity, and apart from that, access to credit facilities to enable them carry out their work professionally and in a more timely fashion also, and more security for farmers on their farmlands also. So now let's first of all start with exploring solutions for farmers. As I mentioned earlier on, you're actually an entrepreneur and in the agricultural sector. So if I'm allowed to say, I could call you an agripreneur, if there's a word like that, I could call you that. So now how easy is it for farmers in Nigeria particularly to get access to credit facilities to enable them carry out their work, to ease and give them easy access to technological tools on the farmland? How easy is it for farmers to access credit facilities?
Okay, at the moment, it's not very easy. Investment and loan targeted towards agriculture is still as low as 15 to 10% in the total investment and loan provided for businesses in Nigeria. And when you look at the skill gap, the technological gap, smallholder farmers that constitute over 60% of our farming population.
What is the biggest challenge farmers face in securing financing?
Okay, one of the biggest challenges farmers face in securing financing in Nigeria is due to the fact of most of these loans are not they are valuable but not affordable for some of these farmers in terms of the interest rate. So when you look at the interest rate, most of these smallholder farmers cannot afford this loan. And then the loans targeted to these farmers in terms of intervention, we have some bottlenecks that prevent or cannot afford these farmers to have access to these loans in terms of the interventions from the government. So most of the let me clarify it in two ways. The private loans that are available for farmers are accessible but not affordable. Now, the ones that are from government intervention are affordable but not accessible due to bottlenecks. And these are the areas, the gaps that we need to start looking at how we can creatively and innovatively solve so that farmers can have access to funding.
Okay, now you mentioned that the ones from financial institutions are accessible but not affordable, and the ones from government institutions are they are actually if I'm allowed to say, they are affordable but not accessible. Now, how can we bridge this gap to make it easier for farmers? Because as I mentioned earlier on, it's a very critical situation where food is so important, and farmers play a very important role in the fact that they produce this food. So insecurity matters aside. Now, how can we make it easy for farmers to access these loans, whether it's the ones from financial institutions or the micro loans, or the ones from even what we have popularly these days, crowdfunding from different internet sources? Now, how can farmers access money or finance from these areas to make their work easier?
Okay, now, so when we take a critical look of, let me start with the government interventions, because these are the I would say interventions that target smallholder farmers based on the policy designs, on the concept, on the framework. But however, we have the bottlenecks. Now, bottlenecks are often the farmers associations themselves. Now, so we have farmers associations that are meant to protect the interests of the smallholder farmers. However, it is not centered. It is centered around their executives, these farmers executives. Most of these fundings that are affordable due to bottlenecks, they are not accessible to farmers in terms of the ones provided by the government, the interventions by the government. Now, the ones that are accessible are not affordable. These are the loans from the commercial banks, from the microfinance banks, in terms of their level, the interest rate, which is 20, sometimes to 30% interest rate per annum. And these are very, very, very expensive for farmers to be able to afford. Now, again, the structure in terms of payment, most of these loans are expected to be paid monthly. And in agriculture, especially for the primary production, it takes time from planting to harvest, which sometimes 3, 4, 5 months. In terms of cassava, some cassava at 9 months. So you cannot expect farmers to repay their loans the way an average market person, the people, market women pay their loan. So some of these loans from the commercial banks are not tailored to meet the needs of farmers. So these are some of the challenges farmers are facing. Now, when we not talk about the intervention from federal government, which is more affordable, because most of these loans are in their single-digit interest rate. They are affordable, but not accessible because of the bottlenecks. Now, some of these bottlenecks are even the farmers associations themselves. Some of these farmers associations are meant to protect the interests of their members, and most of their members are constitute smallholder farmers. And these
Mr. Abushson is having a bit of a technical issue again with his network. Okay, he's back now. Yes, continue, Mr. Abushson.
Apologies, please. All right. So if you can hear me, so this population cannot have access to this loan. So most of these loans end with their executives. So their escorts take this loan, absorb it within the that we need to, some of the bottleneck we need to start addressing. First of all, empowering these associations to know that when their members have been empowered, it is now easier for more intervention to come to them. Just like the Anchor Brass program that that was stopped because of the repayment, because of the poor repayment that is happening, that the intervention experienced. Over 1 trillion naira was invested, less than 25% repayment loan. So these are some of the challenges, these are some of the bottlenecks that need to be looked into for smallholder farmers to be able to have access to most of these financial facilities, both from the private and the public sector.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, Mr. Abushson, but we also know of traditional lenders. Now, how can traditional lenders better serve the need of agricultural businesses? Because we know there, like you rightfully mentioned, there are some bottlenecks with getting loans from government intervention funds and also from financial institutions. So what about traditional lenders? Can they come into this gap and close this gap for farmers?
Definitely. Even as we speak, most of the loans that these farmers are having access to in their small capacity are provided by traditional lenders. Now, these traditional lenders, for them to be able to do more, they also need to be trained. They also need to be empowered. Now, when I talked about empowerment here, it's about scaling what they're doing. Now, so training, capacity building for them, and then also capacity building for the farmers so that it can be more lucrative. When I mean lucrative now is that the farmers must understand that farming must move from manpowered to mechanization. Now, when we are talking about mechanization, we are now also looking at mass food crop production, which will now be what will end the food crisis in Nigeria, because we are doing at a lower scale. The traditional farmers, traditional lenders are also doing it at a smaller scale. So when they are empowered, training-wise first, financially also, now a level of investment should also go to these traditional lenders for them to do more. Now, when they are empowered, then at the other way, farmers also need to be empowered, that we stop using experience only to farm, but also looking at every other phase that all the other practice that makes farming sustainable, profiting, and productive.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Abushson. Now, I understand what you're saying. Yes, there should be more education for farmers. There should be more education also for the traditional lenders, and also more training for them as to how they can get these loans. But what about coming together to form groups? That's for the farmers, because if a group of farmers, maybe in numbers of perhaps maybe 10 to 15, come together and approach a financial institution requesting for a loan to get more technological tools for their farmlands that will help them to aid faster crop production, wouldn't an investor be committed to that group of farmers, as opposed to just maybe one or two farmers coming individually to meet with an investor or a financial institution?
Okay, so I think this is one of the services Trema Agro Services provide. We do cluster farming. We are already trying to run some of our pilot programs in Adamawa State, in Taraba, Plateau, and also probably Kogi State. Now, we believe that cluster farming is another way that these individual farmers can be empowered. So when we do cluster farming, it's going to be about sharing risks, sharing the risks, sharing the cost of production, and also sharing the profit. Now, this will make farmers to produce more. Individually, the cost of accessing these facilities is quite high. Then again, the trust level is also there. Then because it is still loan collected, and then it still boils down to, like I said earlier, manpower driven. So the result will be little. But when we do cluster farming, we can also start introducing mechanization. Now, when we introduce, until mechanization is introduced in our farming system in Nigeria, we may not be able to achieve the kind of result we are looking at, because manpower has limitation. So when a farmer has, for example, 3 hectares, 4 hectares, 5 hectares, the farmer, because of manpower and the cost of labor, and then again, labor is no longer being available in this rural area because of rural-urban migration. So most of the young people who are into providing services for these smaller farmers are also leaving the rural settlement to urban settlement for better life. So we need to introduce mechanization, and this mechanization is not one, a single farmer cannot afford it, but when they are into cluster, they will be able to afford it. So it makes cost less expensive and more lucrative for them. So cluster farming is another solution to what we have at the moment. And most of these farmers, because of so even the little they have, by the time they come in as cluster, their little will be able to do more compared to when they're doing it as an individual.
I like that suggestion, yes. So it's something that perhaps we can also adopt in a city center like Lagos, that we don't have too much available a large expanse of land for people to farm on, because most areas are well developed for commercial activities. But I think a group of people can come together to actually start their own cluster farming in the city also. So I think it's a very good intervention too. Okay, so now considering yes, we've already mentioned that traditional lenders have bridged this gap also. Now, what other public-private partnership can farmers also tap into, apart from the ones traditional lenders are serving right now?
All right. So the cooperatives, most of these farmers have cooperatives. It's just that when we look at the cooperative system in Nigeria, there are some loopholes that it's making it ineffective, in the sense that when we talk about cooperative, we're also always looking at government intervention or interventions that we can take advantage of. Making so, and the effect of it is that most of the data are not correct. So when we have these farmers having excellent cooperative membership, genuine membership, cooperatives, they can do what we call savings and lending among themselves. Now, this also come back again to the point I mentioned, which is training, and this is also a service at Trema Services we are trying to provide. We are more interested in innovative agro-financing. Innovative agro-financing is to reduce the cost and the burden on the farmers in assessing affordable funding for their farms. So when we look at cooperative can be strengthened to have access to capital in terms of savings, memberships coming to save and also take loans for themselves. We call it TRIP. So that is on one side. Then when we talk about government intervention, I will advise, I'm just suggesting that government should stop giving loans to farmers, rather provide subsidy in terms of inputs. Now, input as at fertilizer, the cost of fertilizer is currently very high. So we look at subsidy in terms of fertilizer, pesticide, herbicide, so that the funding an average farmer can have access to it, he or she can be able to use it properly. Now, why am I saying that government will stop giving loan? The trust level between the citizens and the government in Nigeria is very low. So when interventions in terms of loan comes to farmers, what the farmers are seeing is, this is my own share of the national cake. The corruption, the illusion that Nigerian government is corrupt is also affecting how our citizens are responding to interventions that are coming from the government. So the people see it as, this is my own share. So they take it and don't want to repay back. But if it is in subsidy, then they can have access to input in a more cheaper cost. Now, it will also increase their productivity. And this will also has effect in our food production and also solve our food crisis. So government should look more into intervention in terms of subsidy rather than loan. Again, because of the borrower psychology in context of Nigeria. We have seen it over and over, we have tried it over and over, that when government give loan to people, it's either that you hear that they are going to go and marry more wives down north, or the repayment of this loan is very, very low. Just like I said earlier, a quick look at the Anchors Borrowers program will give us a perspective to what the borrower's psychology of Nigeria looks like, which is less than 24% of this loan that was repaid. So these are then, when we now talk about public-private partnership, the government should partner more with these traditional lenders, just like we said earlier. They're already providing these facilities in a lower scale, so they can amplify what they're doing. They can upscale what they're doing, so it can be scaled up and serve the need. Then we also need to start looking at how, as service providers to these smallholder farmers, educate the farmers in terms of mitigating the risks. Like we are looking at this here. NIMET has given a weather report. There were heat waves. Most of these farmers don't even have access to this information. So going back to farm in their with experience. So even though they take note, if there is any natural disaster in terms of whether climate change, whether any of these things, it's going to still affect how they repay back. Now, financial institutions or lenders who are ready to, or investors who are ready to invest in agriculture will keep seeing agriculture as a risk zone area. and which will not attract a level of investment. So we need to do cross-sectional collaboration. Ministry of Agriculture need to collaborate with NIMET, which is Nigeria Meteorological Agency, that give weather reports, weather forecast. A lot of resources are on this platform. The federal government of Nigeria is doing so much, but quality information, we cannot see the much they are doing. So we need to do cross-sectional collaboration so that we can pass right information to these farmers, and the farmers will be able to make informed decisions.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Abushson. That was actually, yes, you really explained the reasons for this. And yes, a partnership with NIMET, for example, will actually guide farmers as to the kind of crops they should plant. For example, when there's going to be a lot of heat, especially in northern Nigeria, which is really affected by the dry season in this country. So that's a very valid point. Okay, now there's an important issue now, land ownership in Nigeria. Now, considering the complex land ownership structures in some regions in this country. Now, how can financing be made accessible to all farmers, including smallholders and those without clear land titles?
Okay. Now, I think the federal government has, for me, I'll say the federal government has been trying. Most of the intervention given to farmers, land ownership has never been a yardstick for you to access the loan. Then again, I feel that we should start moving from land ownership to land usage. So we should start talking about land usage instead of just land ownership. I should have rights to use the land, even though I don't have ownership of it. In Rwanda at the moment, if you don't use your land for a particular setting of time, for a particular period, you get fined for it because they have limited land. So they don't have what to store. They don't have land to keep in storage for them. So what I would say is this, that farmers need to start having data. We should start talking about data. One of the reasons why some of these farmers don't have access to this funding is data. They don't have financial statement, no financial record, no data of their finances at all in terms of expenses, in terms of income, in terms of revenue, and all of that. So this is one area farmers need to start looking at so that they can be able to start, because every financial institution, both traditional or modernized institution, looked at institutional financial institution looked at data, and most of these farmers, which are smallholder farmers, don't have data. Now, again, I will encourage more service provider to start providing such services for these farmers for them to be able to have data of their finances. Now, we have our software called Treco Cooperative Management System, and what we do is for bookkeeping for these smallholder farmers. So when financial institutions see how much some of these smallholder farmers are generating, it also encourage investment. We had an experience in Taraba that one particular farmer, a smallholder farmer in context, had 20 million naira cash in his bedroom. So most of these finances are not accounted for. So it even make investment directed to these farmers not accessible to them because they are seen as they don't have the capacity. So we need to start also looking at how to encourage these farmers to keep accurate data to assess funding. So land ownership is not much as a problem as accurate data. We don't really have data, and these farmers cannot provide data of their financials, which also is an obstacle in obtaining, in assessing financial facilities.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Abushson. Now, just before we round up, now I just want to ask you this. Now, how can financial institutions create financing models that consider the long-term growth cycles of crops and livestock rather than just focusing on short-term loan repayments?
Yeah, now, so this is going to be deliberate. Like I said, it's going to be deliberate. Agriculture has the tendency to give 50, sometimes 60%, 70% return of investment. However, there is time. So we need to start, I think the House Committee Chairman on Banking Regulation, on the House of Reps, Honorable Bello Rufai, should look at how we can create regulations for our banking system. If the banking system gets regulated on how to finance agriculture, I think we can do well, because for them it's about interest, but we need to also start looking at long-term investment, not just investing on real estate, investing on other sector, and abandoning agriculture. Looking at the time, the long-term goals. Again, you see, let me take a quick example at the real estate. Real estate is also something that has a long-term goal, but because of the way it has been structured, so it enables investors to invest in the scheme, have a long-term goal, and also have a short-term goal. So we also need to start drawing models like that. So we have to look at the long-term and also at the short term, so that our loan scheme can be more productive. So what we have right now cannot be productive. So we need to look at how we can balance this long-term and short-term loan scheme for farmers. I will just suggest that the Committee on Banking regulations can help us look into that, because most of these commercial banks, financial institutions, are more interested in profit, in short goals for them than the longer term. So I will leave it to the regulatory bodies to help us look into that.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mr. Emmanuel Abushson. It was great having you on Market Insight this morning as we discussed how easy it is for farmers to access credit facilities to enable them have effective crop production throughout the year, and also get access to technological tools to make farming easy for them. So that's our time with Mr. Abushson this morning, the CEO of Agro-Trema Services Limited. We look forward to having you on Market Insights again. And that's our time this morning on today's episode of Market Insights, as we discuss bridging financial gaps for farmers and exploring the solutions available to close this gap. So we're going to discuss our next episode of Market Insights tomorrow as we tackle more financial and economical issues affecting Nigeria and all over the world. I am Lavina Emma, your host. Do stay tuned to SOUQ News Update on SOUQ News Television.